Welcome to SAMM's first podcast series of 2021. To start off the year, we are bringing you a series dedicated to all the management and marketing subjects on offer at the University of Melbourne. Choosing what subjects to do can be a stressful and time-consuming experience, so we endeavour to make that process easier. We'll hear from professors, tutors and students and get the inside scoop and details on each subject. In this episode, we'll explore the electives within the management major, including principles management, business negotiations, managing supply chains, and managing globally. For our first insight, we're starting off with principles of management, which is a first-year introductory subject to the world of management. This will often be your first foray into the management major, where you'll learn the fundamentals of management and leadership. You'll hear from me, Helen, and our other podcast host, Gabrielle. So, Gabs, can you tell us a little bit about principles of management?
Yeah, of course. So, principles of management is kind of like an introductory subject for all of the various management classes that you might take later on. And it includes like elements of HR, workplace psychology, global teams, and organizational behavior. I think it's a really good starting point when you're trying to decide if the management major is for you, and if so, what subjects you might be inclined to take later on down the road, because you get to exposed to so many different interesting concepts.
As it's a first-year subject, what can students expect when taking principles of management?
Yeah, so I would expect to have an easier sort of introduction to future management electives. Like, you do start to get exposed to the typical management group assignments, cases, and like academic essays. But because it's a level 1, I feel as though they're a lot more forgiving than in level 2 and level 3 subjects. I wouldn't say the workload is necessarily lighter, but they do allow you to sort of learn and grow throughout the subject, which helps you later on down the track.
In terms of assessment, is it a lot of essay writing, individual work, or group work?
Yeah, so you do have like a big group assignment, and within tutorials you work with the same group for the whole year, so you really get to form like a close bond with your teammates. There's also a few individual assessments, like your typical academic essay and that sort of thing. And then the exam is like, they give you 5 different mini essay questions, and I think you pick 4 of them or something like that. So it's not too bad overall.
Out of all that, what do you think will be the most enjoyable part?
I really enjoyed the group assignment probably the most because it was my first like case study style group assignment, and we got to look at the whole Boeing scandal, so it was super contemporary and allowed me to see how I could apply my knowledge that I'd learned in class to a real company example. So I really enjoyed that from like even a future consulting sort of perspective.
Can you give us a little bit of an overview of the topics that you'll be studying in this subject?
Yeah, so in Principles of Management, there are definitely like a variety of subjects that you get to study. You start off with the more theoretical side of things and look at different managerial theories like scientific management, but then after that, it gets a lot more practical. So the course is sort of divided into a variety of topics. There's like the planning topic where you look at decision making in the workplace as well as goal setting. Then there's the whole organizing section where you look at organizational structures and culture. Then there's leading, which looks at more leadership and teamwork. And finally, contemporary challenges such as corporate social responsibility and diversity. So you're really exposed to a variety of different topics, which is amazing. It sort of allowed me to learn what elements of management I love and what parts I dislike and probably wouldn't pursue later on down the track.
So for this subject, what kind of student would you recommend to take it? Students with a deep interest in management or just looking to take their first steps into management?
Yeah, no, I get that. I feel like it's a good subject to do as like either a breadth or an elective, or if you're just a bit unsure. I think the type of student who'd be suited to this is someone who likes teamwork for sure, because management subjects always have group assignments and you have a lot of opportunities to work in a team. So it's good to be open to like working hands-on with other people and helping your group succeed. I think it's also a good subject if you're someone who likes big picture concepts that are more like qualitative rather than quantitative, because a lot of the times the things you're talking about are sort of like more intangible, like organizational culture. So I guess being able to visualize these things and being wordy with it kind of helps.
And after having finished your degree, do you think you will apply the concepts you learnt in Principles of Management in your post-grad life and working career?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so important for all students to have like the basic skill set that you learn in Principles of Management, like whether you want to go into management or not. Learning about things like how to work effectively in teams, communication, and working with diverse people, they're all super important life skills. Even if you don't plan to do a management major, or even if you aren't in commerce, like it's a great subject to take because the knowledge is just so practical for later on, and you'll be able to use it regardless of where you end up in life.
And finally, do you think you need to be a strong essay writer to do this subject?
Yeah, I definitely think management is very much rooted in essay writing, but because this one's a first year subject, they definitely help guide you a lot, and the tutors are amazing. Like, you can go talk to them at any point in time. I wouldn't say it's like a subject that's too advanced because I went into it not really knowing how to write like a commerce style academic essay, and I came out of it with a lot of great skills. So definitely give it a try if you're a beginner, a bit more advanced. I think everyone would enjoy this class.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Helen.
Business negotiations is a second-year subject typically offered as a 2-week intensive over the winter break. The subject looks at the principles of negotiation that are applied across multiple contexts such as business, law, and international relations. It's quite a popular elective for students studying commerce each year, so we are lucky to have Nadia to tell us more about the subject. Hi Nadia, can you just quickly introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hi, as you've just heard, I'm Nadia Adro and I'm in my final year of the BCom, majoring in Management and Finance.
Great, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us more about the subject itself and what students can expect from taking it?
Business negotiations teaches key theoretical ideas to the principles of negotiation that can be applied to various fields of management and business. This includes business and commercial matters, contract and debt negotiations, workplace relations, and human resource management.
For students wanting to take this subject in the future, what do you think they can expect?
The work assessed is largely individual. However, I do recommend building strong friendships from the first day of class so that you can brainstorm and share ideas on how to best apply the management theory to each case study.
So how many case studies would you get throughout that 2-week period?
You get one per class and you have 10. You do a practical case where you act out a sample case and then you self-reflect and submit a reflection after each lesson.
What do you think were the most enjoyable parts for this subject?
I enjoyed enacting out the sample cases where we had to undertake our own negotiations with a partner. These were based on real life scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the first task we had was to negotiate the price of a car sale, which is an activity that we are all going to have to encounter at some point of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
The activities helped me self-reflect and recognize my own strengths and weaknesses that I display in negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
This will inevitably help me in the future as I encounter these situations in real life.
Definitely. Would you say you're a better debater now after doing this subject?
Yes, I was shocking before, but I'm slightly better.
Besides that, though, how do you think the skills and content that you learn will benefit you in the future and other students as well?
I believe that the subject uses real-world case studies that are so relevant to all our lives. For example, I had to play the role of a fresh graduate starting a new job and negotiate my terms of employment with my future employer. Obviously, this case study is particularly relevant and something we are all going to encounter very early in our careers.
And what type of student would you recommend this subject to? Would it just be commerce students or people from other faculties as well?
I definitely encountered all types of students in the subject because it can be taken as a breath.
Mm-hmm.
I'd recommend this subject to you if you like writing essays or would like a break from all the numbers that our commerce degree typically brings us. I definitely believe this is a great opportunity to explore a new discipline for those who haven't delved into management before.
So seeing this is a 2-week intensive, how intense did you find the workload?
To be honest, it was quite intense, and I would recommend lowering all your other priorities to get through the 10 days, especially. If you want to do the subject properly, I would recommend making sure that that is your main priority over the 2 weeks, but you will be rewarded for it in the future because you have completed a subject in such a short amount of time and you have so much free time in the following semesters where you can underload.
Yeah, definitely. So overall, would you recommend this subject to other students?
Yes, as long as you're prepared to work intensively and work hard, you will do well in the subject.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nadia. Thank you for your insight on business negotiations. Next, we're looking at managing supply chain networks, which is a third-year subject that looks at the various stages of production and delivery networks. In this subject, you'll look at real-world cases and situations on how to optimize supply chains for maximum efficiency.
So now we've got Isabella on the podcast to talk us through her experience with supply chain management, now called managing supply chains. Could you quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Isabella Montaliani. I'm a third year commerce student at the University of Melbourne, and I'm majoring in marketing and management.
Maybe you could briefly introduce the subject and why, well, I'm not sure if it was this subject, but why this subject made you rediscover that passion for management.
I found this subject kind of gave, I don't think many other management subjects would give the kind of information of what goes on behind the scenes, say, like managing a product or something. Like, what does it take for the whole business and then their strategic partners and everyone to kind of come together and make this work? Yeah, I just found it a really interesting subject.
Yeah, I definitely think it's different compared to some of the other more like psychology-based management subjects.
Yeah, for
Could
sure.
you maybe talk us through some like the content and I guess skills that you learned?
So basically, the subject provides like a direct relation between what goes on behind the scenes of, say, marketing a product or successful inventory management. We were supposed to provide more critical analysis about in a kind of advisory consulting way. I really enjoyed, I guess, learning about the different companies, and we had a few different case studies. And so it felt very relevant.
Like, were there any highlights overall of this subject for you?
Yeah, like I think the whole case study thing made it feel very real life, which was really good. But yeah, the main highlight for me was definitely the company case studies. Yeah, and I remember one week we did something on Zara, and it was learning about, for those of you who like fashion and learning about massive companies like Zara, it was interesting to see that companies like that, they don't even hold inventory in their stores. It's all in warehouses, and the way they organise that, I found that quite interesting. And
That's really cool. I guess like what kind of student would you recommend this subject to? Like, do you have to be really interested in, I guess, management in general or like working on cases, like the sort of consulting style subject? Or do you think anyone could take this subject?
if you really like straightforward content and applying, say, like advisory or consultancy skill that you kind of want to explore and I guess develop a little more, I think it's a pretty good subject for you. Like, and it's not very mathematical. So if you're a commerce student who, you can come from any commerce field, I think, because the subject ties in so much with even economics, bit of finance, marketing. So yeah, I think it's a good subject as well if you're not looking for a lot of heavy math-based or quantitative as well. Yeah.
So Isabel, could you maybe just give us an overview of, I guess, the actual subject and what you learn?
So as I said before, the subject material is relatively similar each year, obviously with more emphasis applied on COVID-19 and how this really influenced and was mitigated in supply chains, which I found really interesting because I am working part-time with SAMM and I'm also working part-time at another organisation. So I can kind of see how, I guess, these issues relate directly to companies. One of the major components of the content, which tied in with a lot of different things, was the different strategies for managing different product types and their functions. This also extended to a global context and the, I guess, main objectives of a firm, which were maintaining economies of scale, reducing costs, and I guess maximising the competitive advantage in challenges such as COVID-19.
Sounds really interesting. Great content. So I guess how can you see the skills and content that you learn through supply chain management benefiting students in the future?
Well, as I kind of mentioned earlier, the subject provides a direct relation between the content existing and companies and industries. I guess most of this relates to the insights on what goes on behind the scenes of, say, a successfully marketed product, the inventory management, as I mentioned. For students who are wanting to perhaps open their own business or firm, an important point made in the last lecture we had of the semester was if they want to invest in new technology, or even for companies who are wanting to make new investment in technology, they have to ensure that their processes are able to support these. And yeah, I also found that it did provide some insight into consultancy and what you would be doing if you're providing advice to, say, a firm like IKEA or Zara or a big tech company or something. So
that's really great. Good to hear about the real world outcomes that you sort of get from it. Well, thank you so much, Isabella, for coming in and talking about supply chain management. We really appreciate you being here.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me.
Managing globally is another third-year subject that looks at the choices managers face in the global market. This subject takes a closer look at international human resource management and global supply chains.
So next we're joined by Sophie, who's here to chat with us about international HR, which is now called Managing Globally. Sophie, would you be able to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, so as Gab said, my name is Sophie and I'm a third-year commerce student at UniMelb, and I'm about to enter my last semester majoring in management and finance.
Fabulous. And did you want to talk a bit about the subject and just introduce it?
Yeah, so when I did it last semester, so semester 2, 2020, which was online, the subjects covered were all about like globalization, expat management, repatriation, compensation on an international scale. So it was all focused on doing HR in multinational companies that operated across multiple countries. Really interesting and really quite broad, and yeah, it was a good subject.
Yeah, what would you say that students can sort of expect from the subject, like in terms of workload, maybe the sorts of projects you might expect to be working with?
Yeah, so each week there was 1 2-hour lecture and 1 tutorial, and the assessments included an individual assignment, a group assignment, and then a final exam, which I believe was worth 50%, and that was online at the time when I did it. The group project was really quite fun. It was about a company. You got to choose a company and explore its different HR practices that it was doing. But yeah, it's always like any group assignment, always important to have a good group assignment, which luckily I had. So it makes it much more enjoyable because you actually get to meet people. The subject was also really good because the tutors were fantastic. I had Kim Goodwin, who I'm not entirely sure if she's still part of the subject this coming semester, but she had practical HR knowledge and was really enthusiastic, so it made it a good subject.
Yeah, I guess, were these the most enjoyable parts for you, or were there any other highlights that kind of stood out?
Yeah, I also liked the fact that in our tutorials we had lots of like breakout room sessions, so we got time to meet people and really actually apply the knowledge we were learning rather than just sort of take it in and try and learn it yourself. So that really helped as well with being online because it's so isolating and you don't get to meet people as much. So I thought that sort of aspect of how the tutorials were organized made it much more enjoyable.
And I guess just talking about who should and who shouldn't be taking this subject, like what kind of student would you recommend takes this subject? Like, do you need to be super into management or?
Well, yeah, when I did it, like the subject had HR in it, in the title. So I think if you were interested in HR, which I am, because I want to hopefully pursue a career in it, fingers crossed. But yeah, someone who is interested in management, I think would enjoy it. From reading the handbook, it has changed slightly. So I think it's also covering supply chain management a bit and different sort of Asian economies. So it might be a bit different to what I did, but I think if you want a sort of subject that has that international focus, then it's definitely a great subject.
Yeah, definitely good if you're interested in pursuing like a global career in the future or something like that. Yeah, in terms of skills and content, do you think any other, I guess, aspects of the subject are particularly beneficial to students, like maybe during other management subjects or even in the future?
If you want to work in a multinational organization or an international organization, it's extremely beneficial. The other subject I did prior to this one was managing human resource management, which was quite essential to do prior to this, I thought, just because it gave you that thorough understanding of what HR is, as this one goes into quite a bit of detail beyond that rather than the basics. And I haven't actually done many other management subjects yet apart from OB as well. So that's useful, but of course everyone in the commerce degree has to do that.
Very true.
So yeah.
As Sophie amazingly summed up, managing globally is a well-rounded subject that delves into the cross-cultural challenges and is a good choice if you want to look at global management strategy. We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode on the various management-related electives that are on offer this year. Thank you to all our guests that took out the time to give us their first-hand experience. Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes in the subject selection series that will delve into other marketing and management electives and core subjects.